It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege of interviewing the Colorado Mesa's head women's wrestling coach, Coach Travis Mercado. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Brandon. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching in college women's wrestling?
Um, I don't know if I ever knew that I wanted to specifically coach women's college wrestling. I was granted a great opportunity to move away from Southern California in the summer of 2013 to pursue college coaching, and it was with a really good friend, Donnie Stevens, at the University of Cumberland with the women's wrestling team. Um, I loved coaching freestyle mostly. That's where I think I really grew into it. And I was coaching girls in the high school level in California at the time as well. And, I think with me coaching the girls, like they wanted to compete at a high level. They wanted to learn. They wanted to do everything exactly the same as the men. So it's never been a like, oh, I want to coach women over men. It's just been I enjoy coaching freestyle, and I've been very fortunate to have some amazing young female athletes that have been impactful in my life, that have really, I think, motivated me to continue coaching women's freestyle. And I like that the most, right? I like how they want to compete at high levels. They ask intuitive questions. They just, I enjoy that part of it. So I don't know if there was ever like I want to coach women's wrestling. I think women's wrestling found me, when I was coaching the high school, and, some young ladies have been very, like I said, very impactful to my coaching career. And I think that's what kind of hooked me as like, this is where I need to be.
What was that experience like for you going to Cal State Fullerton and getting to compete in wrestling and putting on that singlet for them?
Man, going to Cal State Fullerton, that was a trip. I wasn't supposed to go to Cal State Fullerton. Like a lot of people, some people have heard this story, but um, coming out of high school, I was going to go to San Diego State, and I was done with wrestling. I was done with it, and not because of anything bad taste or anything. I was done. I was going to go to San Diego State, go to school, earn my exercise science degree, and some things happened with their admissions office, and not because on my end. I had really good grades and everything. And what happened is they called me and were like, "Oh, sorry, we have to pull your admissions." And I was like, "What?" They're like, "You input your grades wrong on your application, and so therefore we have to pull your admission status." Fortunately, my mother, was kind of like, I don't know if she really wanted me to go to San Diego State. Not that it was far from home, but I don't think she did. And she had kind of been doing all this stuff for Cal State Fullerton at the same time. And so I ended up going to Cal State Fullerton, and I was able to wrestle for the club team there. And man, that was fun. Like I had some great opportunities. I made some great friends. I learned a lot from the club coaches and, the assistant coaches that were at Cal State Fullerton. One that's really been impactful, I think, during my college wrestling career, if you will. My very short-lived one was Risto Martinen. He was a couple-time NCAA qualifier for the Titans, and he was really impactful in helping me like kind of find my way of wrestling and helping me grow, and seeing how he acted as a coach and a mentor, I think really helped me um grow into loving the coaching side of it. And I think that's what, for me, being at Fullerton was the best choice. We had some of the best exercise science kinesiology professors, and it really kind of helped me be who I am today on the, coaching side, because of the mentors and the professors that I had at Fullerton.
What was that transition like for you getting into coaching and becoming a grad assistant at UC Cumberland?
You know, um, I got a phone call in the spring of 2013, and it was from Donnie Stevens, and he was like, "Hey, I know you're thinking about coaching college." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." I was thinking junior college in California. That was kind of like the dream job at the time for me. This was kind of not the shoot low, but I was like, I thought that's where I was gonna land. I have this great opportunity. You can be my graduate assistant, women's freestyle. You love freestyle. Like, it's going to be a blast. And I was like, no, I'm not going to move to Kentucky. Like, no, I don't, Donnie, like, um, and then another coaching friend, David Ochoa, who was the head coach at Northview High School. Um, he called me like maybe a day or two later and said, Travis, you need to leave. You need to go and do this. Um, so I him-hawed on it, and that was like in April when Donnie and Coach Ochoa called me, and fast forward to like mid-July of 2013, and I still hadn't made a decision. I was working at the sporting goods store. I was a substitute teacher. I was coaching. I was doing private lessons, living the California dream of working four jobs to, be just a normal person, right? And one day I said, like, I just asked myself, like, why not? What's the worst that could happen? And I didn't tell anybody. My wife now, I was dating her at the time. Um, and I was like, hey, I'm moving. And she got a little upset. My parents they weren't mad, but my mom knew Donnie and his wife Shirley. They went to high school together. And Shirley had said something to my mom after I'd called Donnie and said I'm in. And, here we are 2 weeks later. I'm loading up my car and driving to Kentucky. And, I'm so grateful for that opportunity, because without that opportunity, I wouldn't have moved from Kentucky and Cumberland's to Tennessee and King University, and then King University to here in Grand Junction at Colorado Mesa. So that transition was great. I was coaching girls probably primarily that last year in California, um, over not necessarily over the boys, but I had 3 or 4 assistant coaches, and um, they really focused on the boys, and I felt like the girls needed the same amount of attention and wanted the same amount of attention. So I kind of took over that role of coaching them at tournaments and whatnot. And again, it's been fun. I'm like I said, I'm grateful for that opportunity to go from a high school coach and take a chance, right? I think that's something that a lot of people are always afraid to do. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Um, Really, like nothing worse happened. It was all good from there.
What was that experience like, getting to go to King's University and becoming the assistant coach first and then becoming the associate head coach?
Right. So I was at Cumberland's for about a year and a half. During that time frame, Donnie was very positive of like, hey, like this women's wrestling thing is gonna blow up. Like, we're gonna get you started and you're gonna have your own program. And I was like, man, I've barely been coaching college for a year, like my own program. You're wild. Um, and through like the different relationships I made just in that year, Jason Mormon, the head coach at King, contacted me and was like, hey, like, we have an assistant coach job opening up. It's a full time. And Donnie was the same thing. Like, you need to go. It's full time, not a grad assistant. Like, I'd already earned my master's at Fullerton. So it wasn't like I needed another master's. I was there. And I wasn't hired at first. A lot of people don't know this story. So I applied for the job at King, and I didn't get it. They hired somebody else to be an assistant within that program, and no big deal, right? I was still at Cumberland's and we're still rolling. Maybe like a month later, there was another coaching shift at King. One of their assistant coaches got an athletic director job, and that opened up a position. So then Coach Mormon called me and explained the situation, and that was like November, um, late November-ish of 2014. And I went down and signed all the paperwork the night of it. It was crazy. Like, I was at Cumberland's. We went for a duel at King that day, that night in December, whatever it was. While I was there, I went and signed all the paperwork to be an employee at King University. Um, and then I started like January 1st, right? I went home for Christmas break, and then January 1st was my first day at King. And again, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that Jason Mormon took a chance on me. Like he could have asked anybody in the nation to be a part of that program. They had just won their first national championship the year before, and to be able to go into a program that was a national competitor right away was exciting for me because I got to learn so much of what it takes to be a top program, right? How to compete for a national championship every year. And I think that was the main experience that I really enjoyed being at King, was learning how Jason took this program and made it, from nothing, right? He started it out and turned it into, even today, it's they're a program that's never finished, I think, less than third at the national championships. And to be a part of that and learn from him has been a tremendous impact and experience for me, especially as we kind of, as I took over this, or I say took over, started the program here at Colorado Mesa.
Of course, what was that transition like coming from King to coming to Colorado Mason to become a head coach and starting that program?
It was scary. You know, it was kind of the whole leave California scenario again. California was comfortable and I knew everything. I knew where everything was at. I had friends, my family. Um, my wife and I had just had our first daughter, Kennedy, in in January of 2018. Um, early, maybe late February, early March, Colorado Mesa announced that they were going to add women's wrestling, right? Again, being from California, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's kind of out back west. Our families all live in California still. Um, we had a really great group at King that we had recruited. We were still recruiting some pretty awesome people. There were a handful of other schools adding women's wrestling at the time as well, other D2 schools, some other NAIA schools. Um, and I had applied for a couple of them, more or less just to test the waters, like kind of test my resume, give my interviewing skills some practice. But there was no I was not really like, oh, I'm going to take this job, right? And because everything at King was great. Like, why would I want to leave one of the best programs? I had been promoted to associate head coach. I was kind of helping run the women's team, and we had done really well. We had a great recruiting class, and this Colorado Mesa job opens up, right? And I did my interview there, and it went really, really well. And at the same time, I had interviewed for another school and I didn't even get a phone call back. And I was like, man, I suck. I'm not good at all. Like I'm an associate head coach at one of the best programs in the nation. And I didn't get a phone call back. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know. I'm not good. And, from the encouragement of Jason, he's like, no, don't worry about it. Like, this is the one. So I applied at King or applied at Mesa, did the phone interview, and it went really, really well. And we had an awards banquet shortly after for King for the all athletics, like end of the year awards banquet. And I remember me and my wife Jillian walking up to Jason's office to meet Jason so we could walk down to the I don't remember the name of the building for the at King, but the arena that we have at King. And Jason goes, Jill, are you guys ready to move to Colorado? And she jokingly was like, Jason, they haven't even offered him the job yet. They're like, oh, they're offering it to him. There's no way they're not going to. So I did a on-campus interview and I got in super late Monday night. This is still April and it's dark. I'm like, oh man, I don't even know where I'm at. I'm gonna figure it out. And so in the morning I wake up and I'm like, all right, I need to get my bearings straight. Like, where am I actually at? And I walk outside the hotel, just like the lobby, and I'm looking around. And to my left, you have Mount Garfield and the Book Cliff Mountains, and it's beautiful, right? And then just a little bit to like my other left is the Grand Mesa, which is the largest flat top mountain in the US, and there's still some snow on it, right? And then you kind of turn to the right and you see the Colorado National Monument, which has the nickname of like the smaller Grand Canyon. And I'm like, okay, like this area is pretty nice. And then they come and pick me up, and as we're driving down Horizon and 12th Avenue to the campus, like I just got this gut feeling of like, this is where I'm meant to be. And doing that the on-campus interview was exactly what it was. It was fantastic. I knew this is where a place where I could come and start the program here and be successful based upon the vision of the athletics department and what they wanted to get out of women's wrestling and how they wanted to provide an opportunity in the West for an NCAA women's college program. And a couple days later, they called me back and said, we would like to offer the job to you. And, I gladly accepted it because I knew it was going to be a spot that was going to be great for me to be at and start a program.
Of course, as a head coach, what has that been like, obviously building a program from scratch and particularly a new sport like women's wrestling?
It's been difficult, right? And I think difficult in a fun, challenging way. I've had some great mentors that I've been able to lean on to, who've done the same thing, right? You look at Jason Mormon starting the program at King and, having to be the ability to chat with him and bounce ideas off of him and again utilize the experience I had with him. Another really great friend is Sam Schmitz. He started the program at McKendree right around, I think, 2013, 2014. So right when I was a baby in college wrestling, right? And I talk to him daily, right? Even now when he's not, and then now that he's, out of coaching, I still talk to him daily about things that, well, what would you say? How would you do this? We think similarly. We don't think similarly in this, but, he gives me straight answers. So, it's been great to start my own program and to have the support that we've had here at Mesa with our administration. I think that's gone a long way too, right? They saw the vision of starting a program and being successful. That was a question I asked, right? I'm coming from one of the most successful programs in women's college history to starting a program, and I asked kind of point blank, kind of maybe 2 point blank, was, what's the vision for this long term? Like, and they said, Travis, our athletics department here is pretty competitive, and you can tell that you've done your research on the campus, right? Baseball is highly ranked every year. Men's and women's lacrosse, basketball, women's basketball, men's basketball had done really well. Football had won a couple conference championships, track and cross country, like winning, right? Swimming and diving. Men's wrestling had an All-American at the time every year since 2000, I think 12, right? So they kind of went on it like you just have all this like winning tradition here, and we think we can continue that with women's wrestling. And having that kind of admin that believes in women's wrestling, it wasn't just like, well, we're adding a sport, so hopefully you figure it out, and it figures it out on itself. They were all in. Like when it was women's wrestling time, they were all in. And I'm super grateful for that, right? Chris Moore, Brian Rooks, Austin Kaiser, Rob Courtney, like what some of our athletic directors that here at the time when we started, they were all in. They loved it. And that's what made the transition from going from an associate head coach, which, everything's comfortable and easy, and I know all the ins and outs and the processes. And then you come to Mason, it's all new, but I had some admin that were great. The men's head coach at the time, Chuck Pfeiffer, one of my best friends now, right? And I'm so grateful for his guidance because he started the program here at Mesa. So he knew all the ins and outs of how to start a program at Colorado Mesa. And, that experience has been great, right? And I think ultimately, I got a message from a friend as we were driving the U-Haul across the US to Colorado that said, hey, build the team that you want to coach. And I still have that post-it note. Like I wrote it on a post-it note. I have it on my desk because that's what I've had the opportunity to do is build the team that I want to coach. And I'm very grateful that I've had some time to coach some amazing young ladies within our program.
What has that been like, obviously, as a head coach, getting to build the coaching staff around you and also the team around you?
I'll go back. I got to build the team that I want to coach. I'm super grateful, right, for the people that have been around us, right? Let's talk about our coaching staff, right? The first couple years, I didn't have an assistant coach, so it was just me. And, I had some amazing athletes in the program buy in and help, right? Like they knew I was by myself. They helped out as much as they could in different roles and aspects. And, it allowed it for us to be easy. And now, like, and we're in a position where I have two athletes that, or excuse me, two coaches that wrestled for me, right? Marissa Gallegos just graduated last year, right? Four-time All-American for us, national champion last year in her senior year. Jolynn Harris, who was a dual sport athlete here at Mesa, diving and wrestling. So I don't know how she did that in the sense of if they're both winter sports, but she did it, and she was a highly competing athlete in both. She was a three-time national qualifier, round of 12, couple times at the national tournament, and a handful of time All-American national runner-up in diving. So to have them here as coaches now, right? I've built this support group that they understand what the program has gone through from the beginning, right? They've seen the good, the bad, they've seen the growth, they believe in what we're doing here. And when you have people that are all like-minded, it doesn't necessarily mean that they agree with everything that I say, but they all are we're all like-minded in that we're trying to accomplish the same thing together. And the girls on the team see that, so then they're bought in. So it's been great, right? Being able to still coach Marissa and Jolynn, but in a different way, in a coaching role, in a coaching manner, teaching them those things. That's a lot of fun too. It's a new challenge, right? I haven't had that opportunity yet. So that's just a new phase in my coaching career right now, is to help mold them into amazing coaches. And they're both doing an amazing job as coaches for me. And I'm very thankful that they wanted to stay here and continue coaching here at Colorado Mesa and kind of extend their legacy, not only as an athlete, but as a coach.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you built for the program?
Yeah, right. It goes back to that whole, like, I built the team I want to coach. And ultimately, like, with us, we want people that want to be here. When you want to be here, you're invested, right? The difference between I have to be here, I have to be at practice, I have weights at 6:45 in the morning. It's I get to, right? I get to be a part of Colorado Mesa. I get to train with some of the best girls in the nation. I get to be coached by some of the best people in the nation. So we've really built this culture of embracing the opportunities that are granted in front of us, and taking full grasp of that, right? And I think that's something that we've done, and we've really built a team dynamic that's super strong. Like, something that we say a lot of times is, if you're not going to do it for you, do it for her. And we're talking about your teammate, right? And because how many times is your teammate the one cheering for you when things are going wrong in a match, right? They're yelling at you, like, fight off this way, right? Like, that's what it's about. It's about doing it not only for yourself, but doing it for your teammate. I have a lot of great athletes, and they're super selfless, right? There's two young ladies that I always tell this story, like, when it comes to recruiting, and Kimberly Carlin, who's a sophomore national qualifier for us, Carissa Epling, who was a starter for us last year. They didn't qualify for the national tournament last year, and they could have easily pouted and, whatever, my season's done. But I asked them to go to the national tournament with us as, like, training partner support, right? Those two were the biggest help at the national tournament last year, because Carissa never took her wrestling shoes off. What do you need? Do you need to warm up? How can I help you? I think Kimmy's hands had blisters because how much hair she braided all weekend, right? To have people like that can put aside their own personal goals when it's not their time and focus on their teammates, those are the type of people that we want around us. And, we've really built this, environment that's conducive of learning and conducive of winning and high success. And the girls that are here want to be successful. They want to be the best version of themselves. They want to compete at a high level. They want to do everything that they can, and not only make themselves proud, but their teammates proud, their coaches, and their families.
Who are some of the teams that you compete against each week?
Man, it's being out here on the West, especially in the early years when we traveled far. We traveled all over the place to compete. We traveled to Illinois to compete against McKendree at least once a year. Lindenwood in Missouri. We would travel to Texas and wrestle like Wayland Baptist. As women's wrestling's grown out here in the Western, and I say Western, like west of Kansas City, you know, we've been able to compete a little bit closer to home. The Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference sponsored women's wrestling this past year. Um, and with them sponsoring that, like we started our own conference, dual meet schedule. So now we get to wrestle against, or not, we get to wrestle against like Simon Fraser and Shadron and Adams State and Texas women's, but we still travel pretty extensively. You know, as one of the top teams in the nation, we're trying to always find the best competition for us to prepare for the national tournament. So like when we go to national duels, we wrestled the University of Iowa this year. We wrestled Wartburg University. We wrestled we wrestled at national duels. Presbyterian, we wrestled Lindenwood again, right? So we've wrestled some pretty amazing teams. We travel as much as we can. You know, try to get people to travel out here every now and then too. That'd be great.
What is that like getting to compete against some of those big name teams like McKendree, Lindenwood, and Iowa?
You know, when Sam was at McKendree, when they were kind of winning national championships, and Alexio's doing a great job there at McKendree now too, like I loved competing against McKendree. I'm a very competitive person. Um, Also rival that with competing against one of my best friends. Man, it made for like interesting afternoons or evenings, and I always enjoyed that competition. We never shied away from it. Like, you know, the powerhouse teams that are out there right now with, you know, this year Iowa and getting to compete against Iowa at the Desert Duels in Las Vegas this year, like we all took those as opportunities, right? Opportunities to compete at high levels and compete against some of the best people and really use it as a benchmark for us, right? In the sense that we really don't push like win, 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 win. We push progress, moving forward. Everything that we do, every time we get a chance to compete, it's a way for us to reflect and see where we're at as individuals and grow from that, win or lose, right? So having the opportunity to compete against some of the best teams in the nation fairly regularly, I think it's what's made us competitive as well. I think if we were to not see those teams, you know, we'll use Iowa as the example, right? Iowa has the Iowa factor. You step on the mat, they have the black singlet with the gold Hawkeye on the front. Like there's the Iowa, and you can say that for men's wrestling, right? There's that Iowa, you know, perception of like, oh my gosh, this person's good. Well, let's turn the tables a little bit sometimes. I tell the girls this, right? Let's turn the tables a little bit. Like, what do you think the girl is saying about the girl from Mesa, right? The big interlocking CMU on the chest of your singlet. Like they're like, oh man, that's a Mesa girl. She's good. Like, so I think just being able to build our own confidence in that we are that good, we are that competitive, we can compete with some of the best teams in the nation, and um, I love it. I love competing against it. I'm excited that the University of Iowa added women's wrestling because I think it just draws more attention and it gives us another opportunity to compete against some amazing athletes and an amazing coaching staff.
What does that recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes? And as a head coach, what do you look at in those prospective student athletes?
Right? I'm sure people will look at this. Grades are number one. I know that sounds silly, but you have to take care of your grades first. Like I get recruiting questionnaires and phone calls and emails, and if someone doesn't have above a 3.0, like I don't look at it right away. I'm kind of like, oh, well, I'll look at it in a little bit, right? We want to be able to find student athletes that know how to manage their time accordingly. I think that's a big part of being a college athlete. Um, you have to be able to prioritize your school, prioritize your sport, prioritize your recovery, prioritize your family, your social life. Like, so it's important part of that piece. So like when we start going into the recruiting process, like we look at that stuff, right? You know, obviously you want someone who can wrestle really well and has, you know, is a, you know, a blue chip athlete, but that's not always the thing, right? Like we talk about selfless people, like we have to have team people too, right? We want young ladies that want to be here. I'm really excited about our incoming class this year for the 2024 graduating seniors. The 10 girls that we have coming in right now, they're so excited to be part of this team, right? I have girls that are coming in, right? A handful of them have just done some things that show like, hey, they want to be a Maverick and they can't wait, right? We have a girl coming from Texas, and on the bottom of her wrestling shoes this year, she wrote "Go Mavs." Like, how fun is that? Like, she wants to be here, and like that's what we're looking for. We don't want people that, are wishy-washy. Like, loyalty is a big thing for me, especially with the transfer portal thing now. And um, I want people that want to be here and believe in what we're doing and believe that they can be impactful in our program, and that we as coaches are going to be impactful in their lives. That's really what we look for when it comes to recruiting outside of like wrestling ability, right? Good grades, good family, good values. And they want to be here. Like, they want to be a part of our program, and they believe that we're going to help them excel in their lives, not just athletically, but socially and academically as well.
As a head coach, what is it like seeing those freshmen put on that singlet for the first time versus your seniors putting it on for the last time?
Man, putting on a Mesa singlet special. I'll say it as that, right? And just probably no more special than any other coach in their program, right? And you know, when we hand out our competition singlets, right, for trips and things, you know, the girls always have a smile on their face. Like, I get to represent Mesa right now, right? I talked about her earlier, Carissa Epling. Anytime I handed her competition singlet for the weekend, the smile on that girl's face, like you could see it from miles away, right? She was so grateful that she had the ability to compete with us and for us on an amazing team and with amazing people. Um, you know, the senior ones, that's hard. Some of these girls, you start to build these relationships with these girls, as juniors, seniors in high school. And then they're here for 4 or 5 years, and you've seen the blood, sweat, tears, you've seen the shortcomings, you've seen the triumphs and the celebrations, and the last one's always the hardest, right? Like, because what do you say? Like, you gave your best effort, and I give you a hug and tell you that we love you and that you did an amazing job. And right, and again, I think some of it's reminding them that their life is not going to be defined by the end result of their wrestling career. Rather, their life will be defined by how they approach things in their wrestling career, and how they performed, and how they handled adversity, and how they handled triumph and failure. And um yeah, I'm bummed to see some of the seniors that we have graduating this year, right? I think of like Dahlia Garibay, right? She's been a 3-time All-American for us. She was one of the very first girls I recruited in that first year. And she was like our first big time recruit ever, right? And now she's graduating, and I'm kind of like at a loss of like, man, like I'm losing Doll. And to say that someone will come in and, fill that spot, yeah, in a sense of a roster, but like no one will take away the relationship that I have with Dahlia Garibay, Holly Bodwin, right? I think those are some amazing young ladies that we've had, and I'm very thankful that they've been put into my life as athletes. And hopefully, we provided an environment for them to be successful and that they enjoyed in their college career.
What's it like getting to see those athletes go on and compete in professional wrestling, whether it's AEW, WWE, or the national team?
It's a lot of fun, right? To say that we've had an impact, right? You look at the group of young ladies that are on the senior national teams right now that were at King, like to see them continue to excel at the senior national level is fun. And just to be able to say like you had a part of that, right? I've built some great relationships with former athletes, and whenever we see each other, we, always have great conversations. And how are you doing? And sometimes it's not even about wrestling conversation. How's mom and dad? How's your life? How's this going on? And to see them continue to compete is fun. And again, like Marissa Gallegos right now is still competing on the senior national level, and being able to still coach her and be her coach and be in her corner, not figuratively and also physically, like in a competition setting, but it shows that they believe in us and believe in me as their coach and their mentor. And I'm very thankful that, again, they chose me and us to be part of their lives.
What are some of your future plans for the women's wrestling program moving forward?
Man, I want to get out of top 4, top 5, right? We've been in the top 5 the past 5 years, and we finished 4th 3 times, 5th twice. Like, I'd like to break that little hump and get into 3rd, 2nd, 1st. And that's, how do we do that? That's not just a like, oh, I want to. It's a how do we do that? And I think, again, comes to recruiting a little bit. I think it comes to, being open to some changes in how we're doing some things here. But ultimately, right, I want to continue to build a program that people are proud of and excited about. That's what's important for me, right? Winning, yes, I want to win. I'm very competitive, and people can sometimes misconstrue when I say like it's not about winning and losing, because it's not. At the end of the day, like I still want to win, I still am competitive, but I want people to be proud of what they've done here and what we are doing here. People in the community here in Grand Junction, the western slope of Colorado, like I want them in the wrestling community. I want them to be proud of our program. I want them to be like, man, Colorado Mesa has an amazing women's wrestling program. I want the athletes and the families of our athletes to be excited about what we're doing and how we've helped their daughters grow into amazing young ladies. That's what I want to continue doing, right? If we were to never win a national championship, which will happen, we're going to win one. I know it. If we've provided an opportunity and experience for these young ladies that they're proud of at the end of the day, and they're proud of where they came from, and they earned their college degrees and are moving forward in their life, like that's what matters the most. Not the trophies, not the All-American rings and national championship banners and this and that. Those collect dust. They get lost in closets and attics, and the things that they'll always remember are the memories and the things that they did while they were a college athlete.
What advice would you give those freshmen entering their first year of college wrestling?
Oh man, any freshman, they learn how to prioritize and be organized, right? Have a planner, start journaling. Um, Sounds silly, go to class. It's easy to kind of get lost in the like freshman experience of everything's going on, right? It's new, it's exciting. Mom and dad aren't there to check on you, and you can stay out as late as you want. You can eat as much ice cream as you want, right? Like, but being able to balance that is important, right? And I think that's something that a freshman athlete on the like academic social side is learning how to balance what's important to them. And again, it might shift in priorities throughout the day, but being able to balance that. On the athletic side, come in with an open mind, come in asking questions, wanting to learn. How can you get better, right? And that's not just wrestling, like strength conditioning, nutrition, recovery, you know, mental aspects of training, right? Journaling, watching film, doing imagery, some self-talk type stuff, like anything that can better you, like take full advantage of it your freshman year, right? The more that you can do that your freshman year, the easier things are sophomore, junior, senior year. Um, and I say they're easier those last 3 years. I don't really necessarily think they're easier, because now you're getting into harder classes or your major classes. And what it really does, it helps prepare you for that. Like you're like, oh, it's easy. It's not really easy. It's just you got good at it. All right. So how do we make it a little bit more challenging? We give you harder classes. Well, that's easy now. How do we add? Maybe we add an extra workout in the day, or maybe we tighten up on our nutrition, right? Things don't get easier. You just get better. And I think that's important for a freshman to understand, that things don't get easy. Things don't just come easy. You just have to get better at managing those things.
What advice would you have those wrestlers out there that are looking to go compete professionally, whether it's like WWE or AEW?
Oh man, you really have to build your brand, right? If that's something that you really want to pursue, right? I think you have to build your own brand. I say build your own brand, but build your brand, build who you are, your character. Um, because just the few people that I know that have made that transition, right? They've really built a brand around themselves of like who they are or who they could be, right? Their character, their alias. And that's what's going to get you noticed. Yes, your hard work, your accomplishments get you noticed, but how you market yourself, right? And now in the day and age of name, image, likeness, availability, and being able to do that, man, like take full advantage of it. Like if you are good at making TikToks and Instagram reels and YouTube videos, anything to highlight who you are, um, that's how you do it, right? And don't be afraid to ask those questions and also give them, something to build off of, right? So build your brand, have fun, and really like be all in on that.
What advice would you give those coaches out there looking to become college coaches on the women's wrestling side?
It's hard work. It's not just all wrestling. Um, as an assistant coach, it's all wrestling. You just get to sit in the wrestling room all day type of thing, right? Being a head coach is hard. And I say that in a like I hope not to scare anybody away statement. It's you're essentially running a mini business. And I know it sounds like kind of cheesy to say it that way, but I'm a travel agent, a chauffeur, an accountant, a coach, a you know a person to talk to, all right, a personal therapist. I'm a nutritionist. I'm like a jack of all trades. Like you're running this business and managing personalities, but there's nothing else I'd rather do. I love it. I love having 30 different hats that I have to wear in 24 hours, right? And if you're looking to make that change, whether it's from a high school level to college or men's college to women's college, I highly encourage you just to spend some time with some female athletes and just get to know them and understand what their why is for competing in athletics, whether it's wrestling or something else, right? Um, I'll promote the National Wrestling Coaches Association's Leadership Academy, right? Like, hey, go to the Leadership Academy. You get to learn from some of the best coaches. I've gone 3 times now, twice as a person that was going to learn, and last year I had the opportunity to be a mentor and share my experiences and stuff with different people and younger coaches. um Take a chance on it, right? And be all in. I think that's something that we want to see on the women's college side. Like women's college wrestling is pretty awesome, and to be able to be a part of this, and you're gonna enjoy yourself. You're gonna enjoy being part of the growth of women's wrestling, and I think you're gonna enjoy coaching some female athletes because they're a lot of fun. Honestly, they're a lot of fun to coach.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the women's wrestling program at?
Um, you can follow all of Colorado Mesa on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Um, we're pretty good at our social media. I'm really thankful we have a guy here that does a lot of social media stuff for him. So all the cool graphics and videos you see, that is not me. That is my homie Theo. Shout out to him. He does some amazing work for us. So yeah, any of our social media. So Instagram, I think it's CMU Women's Wrestling. Facebook, Colorado Mesa Women's Wrestling. I think Twitter's Co Mesa Women's Wrestling or WWR. You want to follow me, mostly pictures of my daughters on on my Instagram, but it's Coach Trav. It's what I go by. Most people just call me Trav, so I've just kind of adopted that handle.
Thank you again, Coach Travis, for your interview and best luck in your future at Colorado Mesa as the head women's wrestling coach.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate you having me on today. Appreciate getting to chat with you.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon. You can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again for your interview and best luck in your future.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.